Good afternoon, everyone. It's Michelle Hill with Southern Inspirations. It is Monday, June 1st, and that means it's time for Monday Huddle with Dr. Dawn Hamby of Dr. Dawn ShopTalk. Good afternoon, Dr. Hamby.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad to be back with you after we took last week off to celebrate Memorial Day with our friends and families. It felt a little strange not being with you on a Monday at noon.
It really did. We wanted to honor Memorial Day and all of our service men and women, but my goodness, I didn't know what to do with myself.
Well, here we are now. We are back for another episode of Monday Huddle. And, I'm excited about today's content because, in light of our, I don't know, 10 or 11 weeks now, or maybe we've lost count of many of us working from home and utilizing virtual platforms just like this one. We're having more and more meetings virtually, and we're interviewing virtually, and it's this whole new world. And so today I'm excited that you're going to share with us some virtual call etiquette, and then right along with that, 3 of your 5 tips for public speaking, because we're all public speaking. We might not necessarily be on a stage with a microphone every single time. So I'm just excited that you're going to share just some tips that we can all use.
That's right. That's right, Michelle. And when we had our last episode, we were talking about the fact that you and I were both a little surprised that, public speaking is something that we continue to both get asked about. We both have these forums where we're meeting with people virtually. And so, the idea of public speaking for a lot of folks is kind of nerve-wracking. And the great thing about these virtual meetings, the virtual platforms, is people are getting a little bit more comfortable. Right? It is more intimidating when you have to give, formal remarks, let's say at a graduation ceremony, and you're up there at the microphone, or you're asked to give remarks even in church, and you're up there at a microphone. It can be really nerve-wracking. However, with these virtual platforms, it's more of a team approach. However, it does kind of get people a little discombobulated because they're not necessarily used to that. So I am very thrilled today to not only show our audience some really exciting tips on how to be more comfortable anytime you have to give remarks for your job, but also to share some etiquette, whether you're using Office Teams or GoToMeetings or Zoom. We do need to get a little bit more comfortable with that. Now, first, let me begin by saying, if you're one of those people who just gets nervous anytime your boss asks you to give a report, whether it's at a virtual meeting or in a more formal setting, you are not alone. Michelle, do you remember in the last episode we were talking about the fear of public speaking is so high? It's either right before the fear of death or right after.
Right.
I think I said number 2. I think it's actually
it's number 1.
Yes, Emilio had commented on that, and he was right. My gosh, people really get nervous about it. So again, the benefit, and we always try to see something positive out of something negative. And the benefit of our nation, our world going through the health crisis that we are, is we're becoming a little bit more comfortable with a virtual platform. So we're going to be sharing tips about etiquette today, but don't feel alone. Do you know that up to 75% of people are nervous anytime they have to give remarks? And in fact, it's such a common phobia. I found out that there's an actual medical term for this called glossophobia. Is that hysterical? I think that's the best name because people want to gloss over this fear. Maybe it's not seen as debilitating, but you guys, it really can be. Even in a virtual platform, do you know that if you psych yourself out so much in having to give remarks or just speak at a meeting, that you will end up getting physical symptoms? Your voice gets quivery, your palms start sweating, all of those kinds of things. I would much rather you get those symptoms. They say those symptoms also manifest itself when you're falling in love, right? The sweaty palms. Let's get sweaty palms over something fun and exciting. Not something like public speaking that I promise you, if you follow some of our tips today, you will feel a lot more comfortable with that. So, Michelle, I'm going to start with maybe just my first couple of tips, and then I'd like to talk about actual etiquette. Once you kind of get the fear in line, then I want to share some etiquette on things you can do so that when you are giving those remarks on your virtual platform, you're just a little bit more comfortable, and
Right.
it looks a little bit more professional for you as well.
Absolutely. So I know we mentioned that you have 5 favorite tips that are kind of your go-to when it comes to public speaking. And just to remind everyone again, we're going to share 3 of those today. And then, as always, with anything and everything that Dr. Hamby offers, you can get the full 5 on her website. As in addition to that, in her individual and group coaching, this is just a part of that. These are little teasers, if you will, but we do want to share her favorite 3, because if you do have struggles with public speaking, we believe these things that she's going to share today will help.
That's right. All of our Monday huddles, I offer that for free on the website. So I thought it'd be fun today to just highlight 3 of those 5. And then that way we can talk a little bit about some Zoom etiquette as well. So let's start with the very first one, Michelle. Let's go ahead and talk about the very first tip. I think it's very important in public speaking to remember that you were asked to speak for a reason. In other words, put yourself in the mindset of already having a little confidence. You guys, I promise you, your boss or an organization is not going to ask you to speak about a subject unless they really think you've got some expertise in that area. So just like when we talked about cultivating confidence, which was another of our Monday huddles and another of our coaching sessions we offer on ShopTalk, I want you to be confident when you're asked to speak at a meeting or a presentation. And I think you can do greatly if you just start with the right mindset. So not only be positive, but remember you were asked for a reason. Consider yourself the subject matter expert, and then just share that expertise. If you go in with that mindset, you're already going to feel a lot more comfortable. You're going to put yourself at ease. You're going to put your audience at ease as well.
That is so true. If you are approached to ask to cover a certain subject matter, that individual, whether it's your boss or someone else in the organization, they already are honoring you, and they consider you to be a valuable asset and know that you're going to bring valuable information through your speech, through your topic. So I think that's an excellent point.
And I think what happens sometimes too is people also think that, okay, I'm asked to speak about this, right, Michelle? And then they just kind of psych themselves out. They don't realize they could take the pressure off themselves if they come from a not only positive mindset, but think of it as a helping mindset too. Because if you think that you're just there to go ahead and explain some of these things a little bit better for folks so they can understand it more easily, again, the pressure will be off, and I think you'll start to enjoy it.
Oh, I think so too. Well, number 2 is about doing research, because even though, as we just acknowledged, you are looked at as an expert on that subject matter, and it's probably why you were asked to speak, you still need to take some time to do your research.
I am a big believer in researching a topic thoroughly, I promise you. However, I think when you are a subject matter expert, you can sometimes kind of get bogged down, right, Michelle? You're in the weeds, so to speak. So make sure that it's more conversational. Do the research, make sure that you have interesting facts to share, make sure they're updated and current, but also understand that your audience, whether it's through Zoom or GoToMeeting or Skype, your audience always wants to feel like you're sharing important information, but they want to also feel that it's more conversational. And that's been a real benefit of these virtual platforms because, we're broadcasting from our homes. You might see, a family pet walk by or something like that. And so you already have a little bit more of a personal connection when you are giving that speech. And that makes your audience more comfortable as well. So just keep in mind that your audience, they can read industry journals. They can look up some research on their own if they want to. They want you as the expert to explain it in kind of a more simple, straightforward format and maybe bring things up that they would not have considered. If you do that, your remarks will be, even more meaningful to your audience. And who doesn't love that?
Exactly. And speaking of that, that's your number 3, and that is to know your audience.
Yes, if you've ever been in a situation where you're really uncomfortable giving remarks, and very nervous about public speaking, sometimes the problem is you just didn't think ahead of time, or the person who coordinated the event didn't think ahead of time to tell you who your audience really is going to be. So let's say you're asked to give some remarks, but you really don't know if managers or supervisors are going to be there, or if it's going to be the organization's employees, right? Well, if I'm going to give remarks and I know management's going to be there, I'm going to make sure I'm going to speak about some things and some kind of daily stresses they have to deal with as managers. But if I'm speaking to an audience where it's the employees, right, the folks really in the trenches who are doing a lot of sort of that frontline work, I'm going to customize and cater my remarks so that it's more meaningful to them. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you don't really know very much about the audience. You're going to feel nervous not knowing how to kind of customize your remarks. So if you know that ahead of time, not only is that going to decrease your anxiety about being the one to give those remarks, but your audience is really going to appreciate that too. Because, we have a lot of meetings, right? We really do. Especially with the virtual platform, you don't want to have meeting after meeting after meeting. And then somebody is asked to give a speech during one of these meetings, and they either just talk way over your head, it doesn't make any sense to you, or it really has very little to do with your particular job at the organization. So if you know that audience, it's going to be more meaningful to the audience again.
Right.
And then you're going to feel more comfortable. You'll get that sense from the audience as well. So you'll actually not only decrease your fear of public speaking, at some point, Michelle, I would hope if they use these tips, they're going to actually start enjoying it.
Oh, absolutely. And, what you're describing is the connection. You want that connection between you as the speaker and your audience. And once you kind of find that sweet spot, you do kind of get to that place where you enjoy it, and you're not fearful every time you step onto the stage.
Exactly. Right.
Well, I know that we want to cover some more tips in terms of a virtual setting. Before we do, I want to acknowledge a few comments we have.
Oh, wonderful.
Adrian Meacham said, hello, lovelies. So, hey, Adrian, thank you so much for watching. Amelia Monk says, hello. So, hello, Amelia, and thank you for joining. And then Tammy said that Dawn always does a great job of keeping her presentations conversational.
That's right.
Yes, yeah. So thank you, everyone, for those comments. We appreciate that. Okay, so virtual settings, my goodness, what used to be rare or the exception has become the norm, at least for a period of time that we're not sure how long. And Dawn, I really suspect that for many companies, this may become the new normal. This may be the way of doing business, even when we all do, open back up completely. So what are some things that we can all do to make sure that we are providing a good experience and, let's face it, showing up as our best selves virtually?
Absolutely. And you're right, Michelle. We can't predict what the future is going to hold, but we do know companies already are saying that because nationally and internationally as well, but there's been a lot of research on productivity during these past couple of months. And you guys, the exciting thing is productivity is not suffering with us working from home. Now, people can tend to feel a little isolated if they don't have at least some type of virtual contact. Doing a Zoom meeting or broadcasting the way we are today, this helps people feel more connected because they can see that face. They can kind of feel like we're all in this together, and we certainly are. So the best way for companies to feel comfortable with their employees continuing to have meetings and have events virtually is to ensure not only that productivity continues to thrive, but also to ensure that the quality of the event doesn't suffer. So there's a couple of things we can do to make sure that the virtual platform is almost as good, as being there live and in person. So my first tip about how to create a more professional environment and to ensure that your virtual, experience is top notch is to be mindful of your background. So, the companies now that are offering these virtual platforms, they already know this. There are a lot of virtual platforms you can kind of choose from, right? And then once you've made that choice, there's even virtual backgrounds you can choose. Now, if you use things like Zoom, for example, you can click on that and you can actually upload photos or use their virtual backgrounds. Those are really fun. However, what I find is that if you choose the virtual background, depending on the speed of your computer, it can make you look like you're in sometimes a virtual reality. Because, for example, one of my favorites when I am using a video chat with family and friends is to do this beach background. So you have these waves rolling in. It's super fun. But because of the speed of the internet connection, sometimes you're kind of coming in and out of that virtual reality. Now, it might look fun because, it looks like your hair is blowing in the breeze and things like that. But for a business setting, you might think about just making sure that your background just is a little more put together. So, for example, if you're asked to give remarks at the next board meeting virtually, the last thing you want is to have, a basket of dirty clothes back here or something like that. So just be cognizant of what is behind you. And a second tip along those same lines, Michelle, is depending on your room, it can be very dark. So the companies today are really encouraging their employees. I'm sitting next to a window, but to encourage employees to have brighter light. I actually, because I do a lot of meetings virtually and a lot of presentations and coaching calls virtually, right? I actually purchased a very inexpensive light that's on a tripod. I mean, I think it was maybe $9 or $10 on Amazon, and it just helps to brighten up the room so people can not only see me, but also if there's something I want to show and hold up, that they can see that as well. So you don't have to purchase anything, just, make sure that there's some natural light coming in, but that's definitely the first two tips. Be aware of your background for sure, kind of stage your video area if you can, and then make sure you have really good lighting whenever possible.
Awesome. I want to get those in real quick.
Oh, sure.
Consider background, just so we've got them as recorded on this video.
Yes.
And then I'm going to say consider lighting.
The lighting is very important. And you mentioned recording. That's another thing I wanted to point out. What's really great about a virtual background when you are giving remarks and you're giving a speech, or perhaps you're asked to do a training, okay? When you do that, many of the virtual platforms today have the option to record it. So that is a great benefit, you guys, of doing public speaking virtually, because then if it is, say, a training, or if you are in the business of coaching clients like I am, it's a recording you can save and send to that person. So if they miss something or they want to see it a second time, you can do that. So that's another great benefit that companies are recognizing in terms of using a virtual meeting, because you can record that and show it later.
Absolutely. Those are all really, really good tips. One thing that also comes to mind when we're thinking about our background and our lighting is also the way that we're sitting, because how many times have we been on a call and we're looking at someone's nose or, because the screen isn't positioned just right. And so there's all, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just, there's grace and flexibility here, but there's just some of those things to think about just to make the overall experience better.
Absolutely. It's great to also be cognizant of sort of, you mentioned the way the staging is, or that you don't realize, when you're being on the virtual platform, what you're maybe doing. But another kind of idea I had too, because I know this is so easy. Oftentimes when you're on a virtual meeting, just like Michelle and I having this virtual broadcast that we do on Mondays, it is very easy sometimes to always look at the person speaking. So many times I'm looking at Michelle. So once in a while, you need to be cognizant that you got to look up there at the camera.
Right.
It's so hard to do. If you're speaking, I'm going to look at you. Nothing wrong with that. Or if I want to refer to my notes to make sure that I've covered some things I want to share with the audience, it's easy to look here, to look there. So yeah, you guys definitely look straight ahead.
Yeah.
Also, one thing you might consider, if you are asked to give remarks at a meeting coming up, or any type of more formal speech, the virtual platforms actually give you the option to have your participants listed as audience members. Did you know that, Michelle? That way, the person is not jumping in, because sometimes
Right.
people get nervous about public speaking when they're interrupted. If they've got things they need to say, it may make them actually more anxious if somebody's just jumping in and interrupting them. So many of your virtual platforms today have it to where you can also not only set up your audience as an audience member instead of a participant, but they also have it set up where the audience can be muted just while you're speaking. In fact, another tip I have is, if you're the speaker, make sure when you join the meeting, you can leave your microphone on for a minute while you're saying hello and greeting people, but then mute yourself, because it is so easy. You might have somebody doing the yard next door, right, Michelle? You might have,
Yeah.
I had a meeting recently where we had a dog walking here in my neighborhood, and all of a sudden he was barking, and I was like, oh my gosh. So what did I do? I immediately hit mute. So that's another tip, you guys. Virtually, just go ahead and hit the mute button. And then once they've introduced you and you're going to give your remarks, you can unmute yourself. The host can also take care of that for you, so you don't even have to worry about it.
Yes, absolutely right. It just makes for a better experience overall, and so that everyone is heard and seen in the best possible way. Gosh,
Right.
great tips. Lots of good stuff today. So you guys, we have covered lots of information, but we are very excited to continue our huddles. And, a lot of the virtual meetings that are taking place in today's world are interviews, because that we have taught, some of our former huddles have talked about resume, and you offer the resume reboot, which people could find out more about on your website. But folks need to put on their best face, put their best foot forward, and use some of these tips in this virtual environment when interviewing. And so we are going to be doing a 3-part series starting a week from today on interviewing, which is part of Dr. Hamby's broader career confidence bootcamp. So tell us a little bit more about what's offered through that bootcamp.
You got it. Interviewing is so important, right? And that's why, as part of our career coaching model with Dr. Dawn ShopTalk, I offer what I like to call a career confidence bootcamp. And what that is, it is a way to create a whole package, a customized package for you. So the career confidence bootcamp includes not only the resume reboot, where you don't have to worry about updating your resume. I'm going to take care of that for you. And I'm going to make sure you get that within 2 to 3 days. You don't have to wait weeks for that. It's going to be ready when you need to use it. But in addition to that, I realized that after all the years that I've had the privilege of interviewing staff and hiring staff, I know exactly what I look for as a hiring supervisor. And also, not just that, but I also have had the experience in coaching students and staff on how to create a resume that really showcases their skills. And you feel that in the interview. So in the almost 30 years of experience I have in training and education, the privilege I've had in working with students, staff, etc., I've come to realize that there are certain techniques that you can actually incorporate, that you can use before the interview, during the interview, and then also some follow-ups and next steps after the interview to make sure that you leave the best impression. Because nowadays, it's typical not to interview with just one person. It may be an interview team. And if you're not comfortable in the virtual platform, I'm going to help you with that, because that is something that I do offer as a career coach. So on my website, drdawnshoptalk.com, You can find out all kinds of information about the boot camp, which includes the resume reboot, as well as 3 coaching sessions, what to do before, during, and after the interview. But you also can find out about a lot of other topics that I offer individually, whether it is just a one-time session with me where we take a look at something that really is important to you, whether it's career coaching or life coaching, or maybe it is a virtual presentation that you need. Maybe you would like to look at some of the topics that we offer on ShopTalk because you are the person responsible for scheduling a meeting in the next month or two, and you'd like for me to participate in that as one of your speakers. So the website gives tons of information about the boot camp and then also specific things you can do in terms of interviewing.
Absolutely. I want to go ahead and put this up here. We've mentioned it, but for folks to be reminded, the next 3 huddles, we will be talking about these parts of interviewing, the before, during, and after, so that you absolutely can utilize those tips. But like Dr. Hamby said, be sure to check out her website because there you will get entire exposure to everything that she offers.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Michelle? We don't want this show to be an hour and a half or 3 hours long. And that's kind of the coaching is where I can get in more detail. I like to say that our Monday huddles are just sort of like the beginning of that process. But that's why I feel it's important to offer all of our tips for free on our website, because I want you to enjoy this content whenever you can. And then if you think I can help you further to get in a little bit more detail, then that's always what we're going to do. So whether it's the tips for this week or previous episodes, that's always going to be just sort of a highlight of what we can do more in depth.
That's exactly right. Well, as always, this has been a fabulous huddle, lots of good content. Dr. Hamby and I invite you to use these tips, but don't just watch, actually put them into practice and continue to share and encourage folks to visit her website and to like the Dr. Dawn Shop Talk Facebook page. I want to pop over for just a second. We have another comment. It's from your husband, Mark, and he says, there's no one that will work harder for you than Dr. Dawn.
Man, he is getting husband points.
I'm telling you.
Out there, he's making them look bad, right, Michelle?
Yes, I'm telling you. Well, he is your number one supporter, and that he's right. You will absolutely work hard for every single, all of your clients. So
that's right. That's right.
Well, everyone, that's going to do it for today's huddle. Be sure and continue, like as I was saying, to share and to invite your friends and family to this page. Adrian said, thanks for the tips. And we do appreciate you continuing to tune into the huddles and for acknowledging and supporting the partnership between Southern Inspirations and Dr. Dawn Shop Talk. And with that, everyone have just a wonderful Monday afternoon and great week. And we will see you right back here at noon on, let's see, that'll be June 8th.
That's right.
We'll see y'all then. Have a great day.
Sounds great. Bye, everyone.